So welcome. This is our social justice Yom Kippur forum, our annual forum. What we're going to ask everyone to do, and I think, it looks like it already has happened. Great, you all got muted, which is terrific. The panelists should have the ability to unmute themselves, and so we're going to. I'm going to kind of lay out for you what we're going to do. I want to thank Rob and Warren, who has been our kind of coordinator and chair, helped us figure out what we should do here and helped us put it together. And I want to welcome the three people who, in addition to me, are participating on our presenting panel. And those individuals are Reverend Robert Ward from Mount Moriah Missionary Baptist Church and a few other things, which I'll do in a second. Reverend Ward is, well, you have to find him on your screen, but he'll wave right now to kind of, you'll see some motion on the screen so you can find him. Linda McKinnon, who on my screen is right above Robert Ward, but it could be in a different place on your screen, depending on how big your screen is, I guess. Is the CEO of Central Florida Behavioral Health Network, and in the other one, and she's right next to me actually on my screen, is Elena Novak, and Elena Novak is we identified her as a grassroots organizer, and you'll understand kind of why that is her title. Elena also works for FAST, Faith in Action for Strength Together, and works with our congregation amongst others as an organizer, and that'll all become clear as we move forward. Our topic is mental health and criminal justice. Think globally, act locally. And our intention in picking up these two issues is that we know that there is a mental health crisis, especially in the overuse of Baker Act involuntary psychiatric admissions and impassible obstacles to accessing mental health care that people need, lack of coordination amongst a patchwork of providers who don't share a common health record database. We also know, and we are seeing locally in our country and locally in our community and across the country, the impact of racial tension, profiling, the challenges of crisis de-escalation. We want to focus in on what are the challenges we see locally. What are the challenges here? Because yes, we know these are big issues in the country. We know that there are issues, in other parts of the world as well. What about here where we live, right? Do we know what's going on in our local community? So we wanted to explore that. And then we want to know, what can we do to make a difference, right? And that's where Elena comes into it, because it's one thing to read the newspapers, it's one thing to get worked up and concerned about what's happening in Wisconsin or what's happening in St. Louis or in Texas or in Portland, but what about in Pinellas County? What about in St. Petersburg? What about in Largo? What about in Seminole or Gulfport? And what can we do here locally to make a difference? Because this is where we live. So that's where the third piece of our conversation goes. So looking at those challenges and what can we do to make a difference? So let me introduce our panelists so that we get that out of the way, you know who they are briefly, and then we'll start the presentation, and there will be ample opportunity for conversation, for question and answer as we go through our first part of our afternoon. So let me start with Reverend Ward. Robert Ward is he's the senior pastor at Mount Moriah Missionary Baptist Church, where he served for the past 32 years. He's the founder of the Mount Moriah Christian Fundamental Academy Middle School. He's a native, born and raised in St. Petersburg, and holds degrees in religious studies and mechanical engineering and machine design. He's a licensed building contractor for residential and commercial buildings, and was the founder and owner of Ward Construction and Remodeling Incorporated for 28 years. currently serves as the president of the Union Foreign Missionary Baptist Association, Union 1. He's the budget chairman for the Union Foreign Missionary Baptist Association. He's the construction director of Florida Progressive M&E State Convention and a board member of the MLK Holiday and Legacy Association, and also a board member for the NCLC National Christian League of Councils. He has formerly served for 6 years as the co-chair of FAST, Faith in Action and Strength Together, Interfaith Social Justice Coalition in Pinellas County. And he currently serves together with me as my partner and co-chair of the Criminal Justice and Mental Health Issue Committee and on the executive board of FAST currently. Linda McKinnon is very well known within the broad community and for her work in mental health. She was formerly the Regional Mental Health and Substance Abuse Program Administrator for the Department of Children and Families. And she has, since the creation and the inception of the organization of Central Florida Behavioral Health Network, she has been the president and chief executive officer. She understands very well and intimately the challenges of developing and implementing new programs and systems to serve the needs of consumers, communities, and providers and responsible authorities. She's a past chair of ACA, the Agency for Healthcare Administration, and she is also the past president for Florida's National Alliance for the Mentally Ill, for NAMI. She serves on a number of professional organization boards, the past chair of Florida Association of Managing Entities, and she's an executive board member for the for the Tampa Bay Regional Domestic Security Task Force. She's a licensed mental health counselor, so she's been on the front lines, a family therapist. She understands what it means to be a immediate deliverer of service as well. She's got a master's degree in social and behavioral arts and from USF, and a bachelor's degree in social science from the University of the State of New York at Buffalo. Finally, Elena Novak. Elena moved to St. Petersburg just about 10 months ago, 9-10 months ago, in January of this year. And she moved here to work with us, to work with FAST. She was raised in Cape Coral, Florida. She was raised by working class parents who showed her that people deserve to live a life that they create for themselves. And most recently, she got her master's degree from Clark University in Massachusetts. And it was there that she became committed to the work of local grassroots organizing and returned to her home state of Florida to work in tandem with the community and to work here in Florida, in Pinellas County, to hold our local officials accountable for creating just policy. And so, like, this is her kind of her dream job, is to come back home and to be able to organize local groups to work with local issues in this system in our state. So, having said all of that, that is all I want to say to give you a kind of sense of who's talking and what we're talking about. And we are going to start with turning to Reverend Ward and asking him to really to briefly to describe the problem that we've been addressing within the mental health issue within our community, as we've identified it and seen it within the work that FAST has been doing, and kind of lay out just kind of how we identified the problem, what problem we identified, and we'll go from there.
Thank you very much, Rabbi, and all of those who are participating today. Certainly, I say good morning to each of you, And I'm honored to be a part of this forum, this panel today. I'll begin with the facts as best we know. And certainly we know that there's a crisis with mental illness and addictions in our county. And last year alone, over 600 lives were lost due to overdose and suicide. And COVID-19 has only made the crisis worse. From March to May of this year, there was a 9% increase in overdose calls to 911 compared to the same time last year. The CEO of Crisis Center for Tampa Bay said that we are going to have a behavioral health tsunami on our hands this fall as more and more people struggle from the stress and trauma that this virus, COVID-19, has caused. Over the last 2 years, FAST has worked to address this crisis. FAST, which stands for Faith in Action for Strength Together, is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization composed of 40 congregations from across the county, working to hold community leaders accountable to solving serious community problems that affect Pinellas County. Since 2018, we have heard from hundreds of families, and over 100 small group meetings have been held. We've heard common themes of loved ones who were put in jail or repeatedly Baker Act because they couldn't get access to the help they needed. My daughter, my youngest daughter, who is a nurse practitioner, we had a house meeting at my church family just recently, and she shared with us one of the great concerns that they have at their nurse practitioner, that they see at their nurse practitioner office on a regular basis, is that people who come in for mental health issues sometimes are afraid to seek it, the mental health services, because they're afraid of ending up in the criminal justice system. And that's a sad state to be in when you need help, but yet you're afraid to seek it because you're afraid of some consequences of being involved or taken into the criminal justice system. We started doing research and realized that in our county, the system of providers is very complicated. If you go to 211's website, they list 98 different providers to call. It is incredibly hard for families struggling to get help to figure out which of these 98 numbers to call that will actually be able to help them in their problem. One member shared about her son who struggles with several mental health disorders, and every time their family seeks help, they're given a list of facilities, a list of providers and agencies to call, which either don't handle his disorder or decide he isn't eligible because he's too ill or not ill enough. Eventually, he reaches a crisis mode, and the family is forced to Baker Act him. Another member shared that the only way he was able to be diagnosed with bipolar disorder and PTSD was to be Baker Acted. Once when he was Baker Acted, the police took him to the Veterans Administration, and after 3 days, they told him they didn't have the room and recommended he drive himself to a facility that would take his insurance. So overall, and as I conclude, we've heard and continue to hear many stories like these. And that's why we really can't wait another day for the county to implement a central pathway for accessing behavioral health services. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Reverend Ward. Appreciate that. And those stories really are the stories that that we surfaced and that drove us to really be concerned about this issue. And the stories do keep flowing. And the stories are compounded by not just those who see this, encounter this revolving door of in and out of an involuntary admission to mental health services. But even for those people who have insurance, who are well-versed and know their options and can research what there is, have tremendous difficulty accessing the right kind of health support, the right kind of mental health services, and really struggle to find adequate care and consistently find the support and the treatment that they need. And that's difficult. And part of that is because we have a patchwork of system. So the person who is most familiar on this Zoom call about the many different providers in our county and how difficult it has been over the years to get those providers to work together and to coordinate the delivery of mental health care in our county is Linda McKinnon. And so we want to turn to you, Linda, and ask you to really talk about the delivery of mental health care and your knowledge and experience. And in addition to that overall view, to tell us a little bit about what might be coming down the road in the coordinated access model that Central Florida Behavioral Health has a dream for.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me to participate on your holy day and on this really important issue. One of the things that, and it's not part of my little talk, but from what you said, is that there is also another new organization called Tampa Bay Thrives. I sit on that board, and they are also very much looking at coordinated access across several counties. And they hired consultants, and one of the things that we found out that was very interesting from that is that the people that do have insurance and resources are actually having a more difficult time getting into services than the people who access through the public system, because there is more coordination around that. So we're trying to work through that organization on not just coordinated access in terms of the public mental health system, but for everybody. And so there's a board meeting this afternoon, and we're going to vote on how to start doing that in our pilot area. But I'm really excited about that as well, because it goes into everything we're talking about. As Pastor Ward mentioned, about 2 years ago in 2018, I was asked to attend a large FAST meeting in St. Petersburg and commit to improving the access to mental health and substance abuse treatment through the development of a central receiving facility or system. And I made that commitment along actually with all of the members of the Pinellas System of Care work group. This work group represents over 58 organizations and has 142 participants and stakeholders that attend monthly, including participation from FAST members. Are the reports about the system and feedback are shared with this committee on a variety of initiatives. And we have two priorities that we're working on through that committee. One is a zero suicide initiative, and the other is a centralized receiving system. We have made huge strides with the suicide prevention initiative. Just to let you know, last year, over 120,000 screenings were performed from across the system of care, including social service providers, primary care providers, et cetera. And what that really led to is that we now have a system in Pinellas County where when people are accessing services, they get screened, and then there's a uniform protocol to get them into services, which is really a wonderful thing. Out of that, about 13,000 individualized suicide prevention plans were implemented with individuals across our community. So that's a positive step. But But we also are really focused on the central receiving system plan. So the CEOs from across our system of both community mental health, substance abuse, primary care, and hospitals have formed a leadership group to develop a robust community-driven centralized receiving plan. We spent many, many meetings visioning, not just on what was needed, but how the services should be provided and what would the campus include. We really wanted this to be inviting, a resource that anyone needing assistance would want to use, and to include opportunities for healthcare, behavioral health education, natural social supports, counseling, and navigation to the right service for any individual or family. The vision became the wellness connection, and the plan that we have includes much more than just a centralized receiving system. So the wellness connection is not just a centralized receiving system, but centralized receiving is a part of the plan. It's one small part of a comprehensive plan across the continuum of care that exists in our community. It's not a building, even though PEMS is remodeling the 5-acre campus to provide a centralized welcoming center located on their property. And it's not a PEMS project. It's a collaboration of 10 behavioral and physical health, community, and acute care providers. The Wellness Connection is about putting community residents' needs first in designing it to meet those needs. It's about coordinated access to care, where all community providers have staff located at the Welcome Center to provide immediate care, assessment, and navigation. The Wellness Connection will expand the virtual services that we have and coordination by providing a hub for access to services and care coordination that can be accessed in person or through telehealth from any spot in the county. Our local behavioral health access number for all residents is 727-791-3131. That line is now operating 24/7, and it has been supported by the Healthy St. Petersburg Foundation, who have funded a comprehensive plan for us to publicize the line and address stigma across the country. Advertising, they're using local artists to both paint buildings as well as billboards and things like that to attract attention, and it will have anti-stigma kind of messages as well as that phone number that will be published across the county, again, by the Healthy St. Pete Foundation. Although additional funding is really necessary to enhance the technology line that currently just provides warm transfers into provider organizations and makes referrals through the Care Connect platform supported by the county so that we can actually start sharing more information than just referrals. That is in the works and the planning, and we are hoping that the foundation will support that as well. All of the providers participating in the Wellness Connection have agreed to use standardized screening and assessment tools at any location where a person might show up. This assures that the right services are provided at the right time by all providers and reduces the number of times an individual has to tell their whole story and potentially relive whatever trauma that brings up. Also, we want to make sure that all individuals have a choice of their provider while receiving system navigation assistance to assure that they receive the best services to meet their need. The Wellness Connection model assures that all partners collaborate and refer people to the most appropriate service in a timely and coordinated manner with standard procedures, protocols, and outcomes that are shared through an electronic records exchange. The Wellness Connection will use the best practice evidence-based models for service delivery and shared quality assurance practices, including a dashboard of shared outcomes related to access to care, the current system demands, and the outcome results. And that is currently, there is, it's somewhat in production, but there is a website up called the Pinellas wellnessconnection.com, and we are beginning to put that data out there on that dashboard. One of the things that we want to do with this is that there are several specialty teams that operate in Pinellas very successfully. We have a team of individuals that goes into the jail to their marchment, where people are brought if they are intoxicated and stay the night. They go in and do some screenings in the morning and offer with the sheriff to transport and take people to services if they agree. We have street outreach teams. We have what's called the empowerment team, which has worked successfully with the 30 highest users of jails and crisis units in the county. And then we have the Pinellas Integrated Care Team, who takes referrals from the sheriff's office when they go out on well visits of people that are hard to engage into services, and continues to work with them until they are successfully receiving services. But right now, all of those act independently. There is no one coordinated hub. And what we hope to do is to move all of those teams into the Wellness Connection, so that we now have that information that can flow easily. And hopefully some of the dream is so we now have street outreach teams, but they're located in particular areas of the county. Through the Wellness Connection, if they were to receive information that a particular area had major issues going on, or something that needed to be attended to, we could then redeploy that team to those kind of areas and sort of get a lot more bang for the buck, so to speak. The Wellness Connection will also join physical and behavioral health services. So the community health service providers, FQHCs, are also part of the Wellness Connection, and currently have already started doing the same screening processes and things that would happen for people that are entering through a mental health door. Because we really want to see our residents improve both and all of their whole health and outcomes. It really requires the collaboration of our providers. I know you talked about, we have, Pinellas is an interesting community. It has more distinct providers than most of our counties, and does set up particular challenges, but it's also great because it gives people a lot more choice. By all of the providers collaborating in this, we can assure that everyone is receiving the same level of quality service and navigation to what they need. But it does require collaboration beyond just them. Our insurers, the funding entity, Central Florida, the county, and our community members and stakeholders like all of you to be successful. To date, there has been zero additional funding being put into this. It is all being done by people just working really hard, and some of our community stakeholders supporting. We've accomplished a lot in the last 2 years. We have a strong collaboration now with all providers that was tested and continues to function throughout the COVID-19 crisis. They've all signed memorandums of agreement agreeing to use the same protocols and processes. We have implemented what's called a multi-provider release, so that if someone is seen somewhere and they need to be referred, or information needs to go to their primary care provider, we can move all of that information quickly and easily. We have established what's called the Care Connect platform, which exchanges basic client information for referrals. We have 4 really active working committees on clinical operation design, performance, financial, and business operations. We have decided on and are reporting on a minimum data set for across the community. As I said, we have a website, and we have all of our community partners are able to, participating in providing virtual care through telehealth or those type of platforms. We were able with the community to share a COVID response plan between the hospitals and providers so that if someone was in acute crisis but also was tested or might need to be tested for COVID, that we had agreements between hospitals of who could accommodate those people and meet their behavioral health needs. We were able to work with Baycare, and PEMS actually closed its children's unit for the summer, and Baycare took those children in order to us to allow continued capacity to serve adults during that time when they had to move people apart and social distancing. So it's worked really well. And then when I said we do have a uniform zero suicide initiative, which is also part of the Wellness Connection, that's been really successful. In the first 6 months, we have some initial data just to share. One of the sort of misnomers that I think all of us had, myself included, was that almost everybody had to enter through acute care, through the crisis system. What we found from the data, once we started collecting it across all providers, is that's not really accurate. There were 480 inpatient psychiatric admissions during the 6 months, the first 6 months of 2020, and 2,451 crisis unit admissions. That's a lot. That's, you know, over 3,000. And yes, that is a huge amount. However, we had 21,575 admissions over the same period of time into outpatient services. So people are getting in, probably in frustrating ways sometimes to get there, but we do know that there is a large portion of the community that is receiving services. And this is, again, just through our public funding. It's not, I don't have the information on all the private ones, although the total numbers indicate people from any payer source at our provider network. And some of the other things that we found is that we have close to 3,596 admissions to outpatient services monthly, and that our providers collectively serve over 7,500 adults and 2,500 children monthly. The Pinellas access number, which we really just set up, I mean, it's been there for a while, but just went really public with it, has answered 12,417 calls for help. And amongst the providers, they've answered 35,278 calls for help during this 6-month period. The good news is the people that did call and did receive help, what we found from the data is that for our adults receiving assistance, anxiety was reduced by 82%, thoughts of self-harm were reduced by 80%, and depression was reduced by 80%, and all the indicators for diabetes and hypertension were well controlled and managed. For children, the thoughts of self-harm were reduced by 69%, depression by 70%, and anxiety by 71%. So clearly, treatment works. So that's where we are. What's next? The architect for PEMS has finished the design of the physical plant, and a campaign is going to be launched very soon to fund those renovations. The partners have all committed their own funds to support the hiring of a project director to formally stand up this initiative. And we are requesting assistance from funders, foundations, and employers. One of the things that I think that FAST or your religious organizations could be very helpful in assisting us with is the development of some type of registry and assisting us with how to make referrals into the services and supports that our churches and our religious institutions provide. There's so much of that available that we know we're terribly underfunded in the state. We're 49th or 50th of the nation. And so we have to rely as much as possible on the social supports available at our communities to make people's lives whole. And so if there's any assistance that you can give us in that, we would really appreciate it. And thank you so much for your advocacy and your leadership. I really believe that working together, we can make this happen.
Thank you very much, Linda. Appreciate that, and exciting to hear so much about what work you've been doing these last 2 years. I wanted to so we're going to just shift gears for a minute. We're going to kind of parking lot the mental health issue. I'm going to go back to Reverend Ward to give us a little bit of background on the issues of racial profiling and race issues in criminal justice that have been in our kind of focal point recently and locally in St. Petersburg, and a little bit of background to what decisions were taken by, in particular, the St. Petersburg police and St. Petersburg government. And if you could spend 5-10 minutes just giving us a little bit about how that all came about.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rabbi Torop. We again want to share this work in this racial profiling issue. And so we've been looking at it over the past 2 years. And what we've done was listen to stories again, of course, to understand what people are experiencing. And we've heard stories from people who felt they have been pulled over or racially profiled because of the color of their skin. I'm one who can say that I have been a victim of racial profiling in the past. I certainly personally can share that it's a very uncomfortable feeling, a hurting feeling, when you certainly know that that's the only reason why it occurred. So it's a very serious and sensitive area in our communities, no doubt. And oftentimes it's difficult for people to really report their experiences or incidents that have occurred with racial profiling. And it could be through the lack of having technology or computer or access to one for reporting it to the local legal community. And so what we did as an organization to provide an opportunity for community members to make racial profiling complaints, FAST created what we call law enforcement interaction cards. And it's for members to be able to fill out and turn in. And then what we do is after that, we pass them on to law enforcement in an anonymous way so that they don't fear repercussions of reporting racial profiling experiences. In May of 2019, Chief Holloway of the St. Pete Police Department and Chief Slaughter of the Clearwater Police Department and Sheriff Gualtieri committed to investigate any complaints regarding racial profiling. Earlier this year, we sent letters to all three of them asking them to commit in writing to the following question. Simply, when you receive a complaint, will you agree to review the history of the named officers' interactions to ensure there isn't a trend of discrimination by that particular officer? This summer, we received written confirmation from both police chiefs and the sheriff that they will investigate racial profiling complaints in the manner in which we requested. You may have also heard Chief Holloway's press conference this July when he announced the Community Assistance Liaison program, which is a program to send social service workers to respond to nonviolent calls instead of sending police officers. In that press conference, he also reaffirmed the department's commitment to investigate racial profiling incidences and referenced their work with FAST on that particular issue. And he committed to something new that we have been asking for a long time. And that is, in addition to law enforcement officers having to call in their reason every time they make a traffic stop, Chief Holloway also committed to extending that requirement to every time law enforcement gets out of their car to stop someone. Certainly, we know that the criminal justice system is ripped with racial disparities. And that's why, in addition to racial profiling, we are also working on other aspects of criminal justice reform, such as juvenile and adult civil citations for individuals who commit first-time nonviolent offenses. So that's pretty much where we are with our criminal justice racial profiling work that, again, myself and Rabbi Torop, we chair that committee together. And so that's kind of where we are in our work so far. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. So you've heard about some of the issues, and you've also, along the way, heard about some of the ways in which FAST has intersected and made some difference practically. We want to turn to Elena and really want Elena to speak not directly about about FAST, or to start there, but to talk about why grassroots organizing as a principle works. Why is it that organizing locally is an effective way to create change and to fix some of the things that are wrong in a local community? These problems seem to be, big problems, and they are problems that don't only affect us in Pinellas County. I mean, we see racial issues across our country, right? What makes us think that we can fix it here if they can't fix it in so many other places? Or we know mental health issues are plaguing lots of communities. So we got global issues. Why do we think locally about it? And how does grassroots organizing become effective for creating change?
Thank you, Rabbi, and I'm really excited to be here with you this afternoon. I know a few of you, but for those of you I don't, I look forward to meeting you, I hope, sometime soon. As Rabbi said, I'm an associate organizer at FAST and the organizer working with Temple Beth-El, and I first came to FAST this past January. And so I will talk about, as Rabbi said, kind of those principles of why grassroots organizing is effective. And I want to speak to kind of our process within FAST of what I think makes us so effective. What I believe is really key is the fact that we start every fall with what we call our listening process. We identify new people from the community that we train to become community leaders. We train them to hold small group conversations where people from the community share personal stories and identify community problems that they're impacted by. Some of you may have attended one of those meetings at Temple, which were hosted by Steve Hurwitz and Robin Warren. These meetings are what make our organization truly grassroots, because the decisions that we make about the issues that we work on are informed by these stories that we hear in these meetings and voted on by the people who share those stories. And so once we've heard those stories and voted on what issues we want to tackle, we research those. We train leaders to conduct research, to negotiate with officials, and to mobilize community members to show grassroots support for solving community problems. For example, last year we gathered over 2,500 people to win commitments from officials on providing affordable housing, improving public schools, and reducing youth arrests. And the reason we're so effective is because we mobilize our people power, right? I can tell you firsthand that the fight becomes more powerful when you recognize your own personal stake in it. And when I first moved here, for example, I had to stay with a family friend because the cost of living was too high for me to find a place to live right away. And once we were faced with the pandemic, it ground my search to a halt because she had pre-existing conditions and she didn't feel safe with me going out and searching for a place to live. So eventually I had to move out, and I was in and out of temporary housing until I finally found a semi-affordable place to live 8 months later. But even now, I'm paying over 50% of my paycheck on rent, and that's not including utilities, right? So in 2016, we heard stories and conducted research that told us there were 70,000 families in Pinellas County in the same situation. And we know that figure has more than doubled since the pandemic. And so that's why we continue to mobilize, right? Because it was our people power that got both the city of St. Pete and the county to sign resolutions in 2017 to allocate a total of $100 million to affordable housing. And it will be our people power that hold them accountable to spending it. Our motivation is in part faith-based, right? We draw particularly from Micah 6:8 in the Hebrew Bible, which says, "And what does the Lord require of you but to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God?" I know I grew up in houses of worship where do justice was largely forgotten. But our motivation is also based in a common belief that people have the right to control their lives and a right to the decision-making that affects their lives. As Rabbi mentioned earlier in my introduction, my parents showed me that people deserve to live a life they create for themselves. And I say that because my mom worked 30 years for an airline company, but lost her pension when she retired because the owner of the airline severely underfunded and then terminated employee pension plans. And my dad worked for many years as a mail handler, but was forced into early retirement by a car accident that left him in too much pain to do his job and an employer that ultimately pushed him out. And so I never want to see people struggle so hard just to survive as my parents did. And to me, grassroots organizing is about getting people to see that they can challenge existing oppressive structures to create new structures. And the reason we do that locally is because we have the community bonds that allow us to build relationships with one another. And that's the backbone of effective organizing. And we also do that locally because we want people to know that they can make change and to know that when that change occurs, that they were responsible for making it happen. That to me is true liberation. And I think that this discussion around local organizing is important also in speaking to the current moment, that we're seeing nationwide protests that challenge the structures of white supremacy embedded in our institutions. And we see that the changes that are taking shape in local contexts are driven by communities speaking up for their own unique needs. And these local movements also inform the broader movement in terms of helping us redefine our limits of what's possible. So our successful efforts can serve as a model for change in communities around the country. And as Reverend Ward shared with us, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. So I hope all of you will join our collective efforts in transforming Pinellas County.
Thank you, Elena. And we're really fortunate to have Elena work with us and work hand in hand, because it's, it's really it's hard work to do on our own. So we're very fortunate that we have an organization like FAST to be part of, that has a professional that helps us get organized and stay focused on the efforts. At this point, I want to open up to some Q&A to ask any of the panelists who've been presenting. Really, it's a kind of open forum. So whatever you might want to ask towards Reverend Ward or Linda McKinnon, myself, or Elena. I think we're a small enough group, so if you just wave your hand, and we'll get some help from our other hosts who have control of the mute-unmute. We'll try to get you unmuted. Okay, so I see we got Karen and Rebecca who want to answer questions. So Karen Lieberman, you get to go first.
This is for Reverend Ward. Welcome, Reverend Ward. Thank you for being here. One of the things that concerned me, and I spoke to at a city council program recently about the new community liaison program, is that it didn't seem like they would be city workers, that it would be shifted out to an outside organization, the people who went to take care of the mental health issues instead of the police. And I wanted to know what you think about that, because if you remember the problems that we had with the jobs program when they shifted that out to the outside, and things didn't really get done as well as they could have. And so I was hoping that the people who worked on this program would be city workers or not police officers, but people who work directly for the police department. So I would appreciate your reply. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Karen. Well, my understanding, we had a brief meeting not long ago. I think it was a couple of days ago with the police chief, Holloway, and the direction they seem to be going into is to actually tap into or put together an organized group of local social workers who are professionals in the field of mental health. And so that's my understanding, and they are in the process of funding it. I think they have right now, they have very limited funding, but they have budgeted, I want to say, as if I remember the numbers correct, right now it's $100,000, close to it in the budget, to where they're going to begin with social workers who have the experience. And it will be from a local pool of workers, is my understanding. Because I would certainly agree with you. That would be, I think, better serving the community, our local community, if there are certainly local people who have something at stake with the betterment of our community.
Linda, you wanted to jump in there?
Yes, one of the things the sheriff has recently, they were contracted with a local provider to provide the overlay services with the smart policing project the sheriff had. He recently, that contract ended and he is taking it in-house, and will be hiring social workers on the police force. So I don't know that, I think St. Petersburg, they're not sure exactly how they're going to do it. I know they very much want a local presence, but we'll see how that works out.
Rebecca?
There we go. Thank you. I was wondering, maybe Linda or anyone else could chime in about the Baker Act. Why should it be in more states? What are the pluses and minuses? I would love to hear your opinion about it.
Well, most states have some form of Baker Act. It isn't the exact same, but most states have that. And it is an act to protect people and to assure that if someone is in danger, either themselves or a danger to others as a result of mental health issues, that they receive immediate assessment and assistance. Now, what it isn't is it doesn't pay for what you would really call treatment. So the Baker Act allows a facility, a crisis facility, or a psychiatric unit to hold someone for up to 72 hours to assess them. At which point they need to do one of three things. Either the person has to agree that they need assistance and sign voluntarily to receive treatment, or the person is evaluated and it's decided that no, they are not a danger to themselves or others, and we try to link people to services at that time, but it's not mandatory. And then the third is that the facility would have to petition the court for a continued stay for that person, in which the psychiatrist would present, and they're given a public defender, and to make sure that their rights are in place. So the Baker Act is a good thing. As the sheriff talks about it, what is not a good thing in the current, without having clinicians or social workers attached, is that the police receive a total of about 16 hours of training when they're going through police school. on mental health. Then if they're lucky enough, they receive crisis intervention training, which is a 40-hour training. But they are out on the lines and they are being asked to do two things: to protect the safety of others, and then also, in essence, to diagnose what's going on with a person and figure out what to do at the time. They're always going to err on the side of safety. So when they have a situation where there's any potential that they think that a person could be suicidal or hurt others or whatever, they are going to take that person and Baker Act them. That is really what they need to do with their level of training, and they can't really be expected to be social workers and get people into treatment and navigate and all of those kind of things. So the idea of pairing up with social workers and trained police to answer these kind of 911 calls, I think is really good. I don't know that initially it's going to reduce the number of Baker Acts, but over time it should, because those social workers can follow up with people. They can spend more time and they can get them into this kind of services that they need that would preclude that. But we don't want to get rid of the Baker Act. That's a very important act that protects especially people living with mental illness.
So I'm going to come to Becky in just a second. And we'll let Becky ask her question and then see if it relates to the Baker Act or not. And maybe Linda, you can circle back as to whether or not there would be a way that your central receiving facility could become a place where police and social workers could bring people to be determined if they need to be Baker Acted, as opposed to the decision being made in the field by the police, who and to thus de-stress that focus on the immediate in the moment decision. And that would require presumably some kind of legal change. I don't know, but Becky, why don't you go ahead and ask your question, and then Linda, you can circle back on that.
Thank you, Rabbi. And I have a lot to say about Baker Act, but I'm not going to go there right now. There's a lot, I guess I will say I do believe the Baker Act needs to stay. I think there's a lot of improvements that need to happen with Baker Act. And I think your recommendation of maybe a cooling off place might not be a bad idea. But my question has to do, to Linda, with the wellness connection and the phone number that has come out. You said it's been out for 6 months. Did I misunderstand you, or is that correct?
The phone number has actually been in place because it is connected to the National Suicide Hotline. Formerly, it was just used for PEMS. Now it's being used for the wellness connection.
And how does someone get that number? Maybe I'm in the wrong places. How does someone see and know to call that number?
That's what it's being, we've been working with the St. Pete Foundation, and they will be doing major advertising on that number in October, but I can give you the number.
What you mean, the 727-791-31? Yeah. But who has?
Right now, it's not all over the place.
Okay.
We're, in the process of the plan. We're at the place now where the funding, the plan, the foundation has its plan and ready to go. So it should start coming out to the community within the next month or so.
And so it is a place where someone can call to get recommendations on where to receive treatment. Is that correct? Is that my understanding?
They can get, yeah, it could act like, a crisis line to a certain extent. And then, yeah, someone could get screening and a referral or navigation or assistance to treatment that's going to work for them. What we don't want, and what I heard in the beginning is, and I know for myself, I have private insurance. I had a dad with serious mental health issues. I had a child when she was a child with serious mental health issues, and I know how hard it was to get the right service. You start dialing for dollars and it's really, really ineffective and frustrating, especially if you're in crisis. So what we want is a number where people can call, be assured when they call, when they've talked about their issue, that there's going to be enough information that wherever they get connected to is the right place.
So you make the connection to the place for this person. Is that my understanding? I'm trying to get clarification.
Yeah, it'll be a warm handoff, and you know, so the phone call will go through and both people will be on the line as they're trying to connect to that service.
And then is there follow-up with this person at all to know that they got service, or, you know, because
Yeah,
sometimes
that is part of the plan, is to follow up to make sure that people did get in, that if something happened and, you know, they call a few days later after the appointment was supposed to occur or whatever, and it didn't occur, that then they reach back out and find somewhere else that will work for that person. And a lot of times it's multiple referrals, because a lot of people have financial issues and lots of different issues. The line is not meant to take over what 211 does. 211 does great stuff, a lot of financial things and things for families, but they don't have the capacity to necessarily spend a half an hour on the phone with people. So this line would primarily is related to mental health or substance abuse. But then if a family, let's say, had financial issues, legal issues, whatever, they will make the appropriate referral either back to 211 or 2211 or some other that could assist with those issues as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
And Rabbi Torop, did I just ruin your name? I'm not sure how you pronounce it.
It's okay, Torop, but we're close enough, you know.
Okay. That is,
Michael's fine too.
the design of the Wellness Connection is to be a receiving facility with the capability of having probably what we would call is either a recovery room or something where people can stay for maybe up to 12 hours to you know, help and figure out what they need and get the referrals necessary, or have a chance to be out of the home and relax and talk to professionals. With the current Baker Act, police can't just pick people up and put them in their car without filling out those forms. So I don't know, without a change in that kind of law, that we could change that. But what it would do is, one, both with the social workers, we hope that fewer Baker Acts will be necessary to be filled out, but on the police side, but then on our side, we can always, they could release those Baker Acts. And we do that all the time now, but that if that was written and someone's delivered to the Wellness Connection, there would be resources, because a lot of times people could be released, especially like kids at night, that are behavior problems, but there's nowhere to send them to, or you can't make that connection at the time. So we're trying to resolve a lot of those kind of issues as well of, okay, well, if we can have this person stay at our recovery room for, you know, they come in at 1 o'clock in the morning and they can stay till 9 a.m. and then we can do that work with them and get them connected. We avert having to do an admission.
Yeah, Judith.
So this question is for Reverend Ward. Do you see the Baker Act intersecting with racial profiling?
I'm not sure, but I'll put it like this. My daughter, again, who's a nurse practitioner, I was very surprised when she said to us that they are more concerned about this issue of sending or calling the police when there's mental health issues or services needed, especially with when African American men are involved. They say that they fear that there's greater consequence, and that there's that they would be absolutely most likely directed straight to jail. And so that was one of the concerns that was mentioned in our meetings, that they say they experience, and that mostly it's the African-American male who has that greater fear of them calling the police to deal with their mental health issue. So that's my limited understanding of it in terms of being Baker acted in terms of a racial sense, that they're more concerned that the African-American male will be most likely either taken to jail or definitely Baker acted in a faster manner and than with other profiles.
That sounds also that like what you're saying is that there's a greater likelihood of going to in that kind of situation going to jail than even getting Baker acted. That it'll go from 0 to 60 if you're a black male and end up in jail, rather than ending up Baker acted, which somehow maybe might be preferable than going to jail, although I think sometimes it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Judith, you wanted to follow up?
Yeah, and I guess this is directed to Linda. I would hope that, or perhaps the police department or the sheriff's office, that many of the counselors and social workers that are hired for this new effort are in fact African American. I really think that that's very important.
I agree. I don't know that we will have the opportunity. I mean, we'll certainly try to make those statements. That would be really important to come from your organization as well. You know, depending if they build with it within, that would be their decision making. But I think that that would be really important for the community, especially South St. Pete. You know, to have community that there's a large, now we have used peers a lot, people that have lived experience, or family members with experience that receive considerable training and certification to work in this arena and do it really, really effectively. So that would be something that I think should be considered. And just to agree with Pastor Ward, we have an underrepresentation of people of color that access behavioral health services, particularly crisis services. And I agree. The reason why I believe is people are afraid to call the police.
Shelley.
Yeah, if I could make a comment. There's a pretty good community mental health system in Columbus, Ohio.
I'm gonna actually interrupt you. We're asking questions, not making comments. So if you have a question, that'd be great.
Not right now, thank you.
Okay, no problem. Ellen?
I think this is for Linda. When you are making referrals to community providers, community care, are you able to get people help that's close to where they live? Because in Pinellas County, you know, there are people who don't have cars. If you're dependent on a bus, it can take 2 hours. How are you able to manage that?
Well, we do have, you know, centers in North County, Mid County, and South County, but I know Pinellas, it could take a tremendous amount of time. What we've done, even really accelerated with COVID, is all of the providers, at least in the public mental health system, have the capacity to do just what we're doing now, to have virtual visits with people. And so we saw, you know, in our system, the use of telehealth and computers and those kind of things went up 7,000%, like in 1 month. We did the service, the numbers of services didn't decline, they just changed it. And so what we found from that it's really successful. People like it. Mm-hmm. There's some services that you can't provide, you know, not face-to-face, but a lot of them you can. It's easy for people to get to. We've actually had way more people admitted into services, and we have a lot less people not showing up for appointments because it's just easier. So that's what we're planning on. Like I said, when we first started the Wellness Connection, in our minds, it was a physical thing. It's a building that we were building these services in and around. It's still a building, but that's become a real minor part of it. So I think, especially in Pinellas County, as long as it is, you've got to do that. And you've got to offer a lot more in-home services to people.
Yeah.
That's encouraging.
Robin?
So shifting gears just a little bit, Elena talked about the house meetings that we had with Temple Beth-El. I had one, Steve Hurwitz had one. And I don't know how Steve's went, but in mine, it was surprising that almost everybody who participated when talking about issues that concern them personally or issues in the community, talked about mental health issues, talked about issues related to substance abuse, to domestic abuse, to depression and anxiety. And just from the questions that are being asked today, I think it's an issue that is of concern to a lot of our members at Temple Beth-El. So I'm wondering, Elena, if you can talk about what are the next steps from those meetings that we had and where these issues were raised as issues of concern, what happens next?
Well, as you know from your meeting, Robin, what the next step is for anyone who attended those meetings and committed to being a network member, which the opportunity is still available for that to happen if we want to hold additional meetings at Temple Beth-El, that those network members will then be invited to our annual assembly on October 26th. And when we have that annual assembly, like I mentioned, our network members are the ones who vote. And so when I say network members, I'm referring to the folks who show up to a house meeting, say, yes, I'm participating in FAST, and this is what I want to see FAST working on in the next year. So, like I said, we can continue to have house meetings and continue to hear stories and to continue to engage more people in the network here at Temple, and then move forward in participating in the annual assembly to say, yeah, the majority of the stories that we're hearing are around behavioral health. And so we want that to be an issue that we work on next year and addressing and holding officials accountable to doing more.
And it's a great segue. Thank you for asking the question, Robin and Elena. For me to, first of all, thank our panelists for participating, for all that you had to say, and to kind of bring us to a conclusion with sharing with you why this is that we, why do we do this on Yom Kippur, first of all? Like here, this is our, most sacred day, our Day of Atonement. And why is it that Robin is asking that question of Elena, like, okay, what do we do with all of this? Besides the fact that you all know my own personal passion, and because we've all said it like a million times that this is a core part of our mission as a synagogue to be engaged in acts of tikkun, things that make our world a better and repaired place. But I think when we get to the core of it, when we think about what some of the things that I said during services last night and this morning about what makes life meaningful, what gives us, enables us to live a life with purpose, what enables us to respond to the experience of death in life, and to overcome that by really moving past the idea of forgiveness, and to say, okay, we've done that tshuva, we've been on this journey. Now, how do we make the next part of the journey a life that we say is worth living? And I believe religiously, Jewishly, that a life worth living is a life that is engaged, and a life that is engaged with not just ourselves and our families, but also with our community, and is committed to making a difference in the local community in which we live, not just the world, which is great. And I hats off to those people who are going to, get involved in American Jewish World Service and make a difference overseas, and that's fantastic. And those people who are going to make a difference by, doing the political action in Washington. That's also fantastic. But I also believe very much that we've got to think globally and act locally. I encourage you to be open to acting locally and joining our efforts, working with us, working with Elena to, make sure that Linda does everything she said today she's going to do. And that the Wellness Connection is extremely successful, and that the county funds the Wellness Connection because they got to get on board too and do that because this is a great thing. And the county said they were gonna be involved and they were going to do some work in this area. And we're trying to hold the county commission to the feet to the fire to like make sure they put some funding towards doing this kind of central coordinated care. So that's what we got to do, right? We got to make sure that that when the Chief Holloway says he's going to direct resources towards this effort to hire social workers and to address some of these issues and to really follow up, we got to do that. And there's going to be a lot more issues. We got to make sure that $100 million for affordable housing gets spent and gets spent well, and they don't wait for the 9th year of the 10-year cycle of Penny for Pinellas to say, oh yeah, we got $100 million to spend. They got to start spending it next year and the year after. And these are the kinds of things we got to do. So that's why it's so important for us to do what we do. It's why Temple Beth-El has been involved in these efforts now for 10 years, and why we're going to continue to be involved. I hope and pray, and I hope that you will be part of it. So if you want to be involved, feel free to be in touch with me, with Robin, Steve Hurwitz. If you want to get involved in other social justice areas and issues, Joshua down there and is going to wave at you, and you know that Joshua is our social justice committee chair, and so we're looking for other ways to get involved in social justice work. We take this as part and parcel of what we do at Temple Beth-El, it's also important for us to keep in mind that we are only one of 2 synagogues within the Jewish community. Temple B'nai Israel has now gotten fully involved in FAST, but it's in all of this interfaith social justice work, there aren't that many non-Christian groups other than us, and Temple B'nai Israel now has joined in too. So we got to fly the flag. So it's another reason for us to stay involved. So I thank you all for being with us. Thank you for the conversation, and thank you for your presentations.